Hey there, welcome back. It's me, Drake, that big bearded American tourist. You are watching part two to my European food tour. Originally, I was going to do one video, however, it got way too long, so I decided to put it into two different parts. Part one, if you haven't seen already, you can go ahead and watch that first. It was my first trip to Europe, which was December of 2022. When I went there, I went to Rome, I went to Athens, and I went to Amsterdam. Now, in April of 2023, I returned back to Europe and I went to Lisbon, Portugal, Madrid, Spain, and Florence, Italy, which is what you're about to watch. So that is what is coming up next. But before we do that, I am happy to announce I picked up 3 new sponsors. That's right. First off, we have Cup of Poodle. When you are craving delicious poodle soup, you don't ever have to do it from scratch. Always remember Cup of Poodle. When you're really wanting that poodle taste, but don't have the time to put in to make fresh poodle soup. Next, we have one of my personal favorites, Shards of Glass. Fun for kids of all ages. Pick one up today, Shards of Glass. And last, but definitely not least, we have Itchy Wool Sweaters. Itchy wool sweaters, just like Nanny used to make. Get one today. You never know when it's going to come in handy. Itchy wool sweaters. Thank you so much for my sponsors and for you. If you have been watching my videos before, I appreciate it. If you're new to my videos, thank you so much. Here it is, what you've been waiting for, part 2 to my European food tour. All right, next up we have Portugal. Portugal is my first stop on my second trip to Europe. I was not a big fan of the area I stayed. It was Lisbon. Where I stayed, basically during the daytime, it was very much, there was nothing going on. There were some shops and stuff like that and restaurants. You had to go inside. At night, it was a whole different story, though. At night, it came alive. All the shops bring their tables outside. Everyone eats outside, drinks, and it's a lot of fun. So that was definitely a positive. There are rows and rows and streets of this, including a street a few over from me that had an amazing nightlife. I have a couple photos here that really don't do it justice. I might show them. There's a couple of funny bars and things like that that I took photos of, but it really doesn't do justice of what that nightlife is like. Anyway, the first thing I did when I got there was checked out the pizza. I don't know why. It's just something I do. I figured try out pizza in different areas, and I hate to say it, but the pizza in Lisbon is awful. You can see by the photos, it's just a different style there. The bread wasn't very good. The toppings weren't, just nothing was good about it. And then you can see by the pieces here, it was not good. It wasn't very expensive, but was not very good. Do not recommend it. One of the other things I did after that was checked out the local bakeries. I love fresh baked goods. Who doesn't? And every country has its own specialty, special things that they do. So I got some nice treats here that were very good. The food there in general is pretty expensive. The economy was bad. The food was expensive. However, the baked goods there for some reason were very cheap by comparison. It was not expensive at all to buy pastries and the bread. And on the note of bread, they had this really bizarre charcoal bread. I don't know if it's specific to that area or if it's something that you can find everywhere, but I highly recommend it. It's a black bread, as you see by the picture here. You get some oil to dip it in, or get some cheese and some meats like I did, and it's delicious and a little bit different. So that was my first experience with that type of bread. Portugal is famous for pastels. You may hear them called different things depending on where you are. However, pastels are basically custard tarts. You cannot go to Portugal without getting pastels. They are outstanding. If you're able to get them right out as soon as they come out of the oven, they're really good. I actually, by the time I was done, I did not want any more. I had eaten so many, but they are all over the place. Every place is going to sell them for different prices. Just pay attention to that. You might want to look around a little bit. They do vary wildly in prices depending on where you go, but they're almost all the same quality from what I've seen. Um, Pastels are delicious. You can find them around the Massachusetts area in Boston because Brazilians do make them also, as they are obviously Brazilians, and the language is Portuguese. Their origins, obviously, from that stuff is Portugal. So they do have a version of it. It's basically identical. It's the same thing. After that, I did sign up for a food tour, as I will talk about in other videos, and again and again and again. Food tours are the way to go when you visit a city. You need to make sure you go to local people that are doing food tours. In other words, if you're going to Rome, make sure it's a Roman citizen doing the food tour. If you're going to Lisbon, make sure it's a Lisbon citizen. They will not only tell you about the foods, but they'll tell you about the culture. You'll get a history lesson with them as well in a lot of cases. There's also going to be different versions. I highly recommend you do a walking food tour. You have to walk all around the city, check out different areas, and see different things. There's a lot of different versions of these food tours. Expedia and Viator and other places will show you all these different versions. They range in price from about $30 to $100 American. You can also get them a lot more expensive. You do not need to pay a lot of money to get a really good food tour. Some of the nicer food tours I've been on were very relatively inexpensive at like $30. It doesn't matter. What you're looking for is stops. How many stops are you going on? You want a good amount of stops, and also read the reviews. You're looking for you don't want you want to eat a lot of food. You know, if they complain about the amount of food on the food tours, on the reviews, it's probably not the right one for you. These food tours, no matter how much you're paying, will almost always involve a lot of foods. You do not want to go on one that's like one stop or two stops. You're going for like 4 or 5 stops because you're going to get a variety of different things. Fortunately, in the Portugal one, I did just that, and it was amazing. We got to try a lot of local foods. Again, these are some of the best stops. Obviously, they make some kind of a deal with the companies and the tour groups, but it doesn't matter. Don't worry about that. You're going to enjoy it. In Portugal, I tried a lot of different things. Obviously, because of all the water around them, they're big on fish. There's a lot of different varieties of fish that you will get to try, different ways it's prepared. My fondest memories of Portugal was going to specifically this one restaurant. It was two older women who had been running this. It was a generational thing kept in the family, and they prepared all the meals by themselves. I'm going to just say this one more time. I've probably said it before. You're looking for places that are run either generationally, passed on through the generations, and run by the grandparents, parents, and potentially even the kids. They pass it on. It's traditional. They take this stuff super seriously, and their food is usually outstanding. This isn't necessarily in touristy areas. You might have to find these places. Again, food tours will sometimes take you there. We were lucky enough to go to this one place in Portugal. It was run by two sisters, and we went in there. They sat us at a long table, family style, and they prepared everything right there, the two of them by hand. We got a delicious fish dish, and they made a certain type of potatoes, and obviously everything's served with wine over there. And that was amazing and a really good memory of Portugal. It was not on the regular path. You have to find these places once again, but well worth it. It's also important to remember that a lot of these places, if you do not go on a food tour, you have to book them ahead of time. These places are locally known, and there's a lot of times you just can't necessarily walk in off the streets. You have to book them ahead of time if you're not going on a food tour. So I didn't mention this in the drinks section. One of the other interesting things, there's a Portuguese coffee you can get, which is it's like a regular coffee, but they put this heavy cream in it. It's very thick, and I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's a very sweet kind of cream. They put it right in there, and you just mix it in. And I don't know, again, don't know if it's unique to Portugal, but it was the only place I've gotten that before. It wasn't condensed milk like you get in some places. It was a very heavy cream. I went to this one place and had a sandwich and decided to try that coffee out. Wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but I'm glad I tried it. Definitely try to get the local things there that are unique to that area if you can. They have a lot of really good fresh meats there, and cheeses and wines. One of the first stops of my food tour that I took there was to this great little shop. I don't know if I have photos or not. If I do, I'll try to put them up. We got to try some local cheeses, some port wine, and it was great. A lot of fun. I ended up going back there later on, getting some very expensive prosciutto. I ended up eating that with my charcoal bread and and some prosciutto flavored chips because why the hell not? I think it was my last night there, and yeah, so it was a great little shop. I didn't find too many of those shops around, but I'm sure there were in a lot of locations. Um, right next to it was this dried salted cod shop. There was nothing in it except for like a guy selling all this dried huge sheets of dry salted cod. It was very expensive. Um, that was very popular there. And surprisingly, another thing that was very popular in Portugal was sardines. I had no clue this was a thing, but it was. I actually stumbled on this shop that was like Willy Wonka's version for chocolate shop for sardines. It was this crazy shop with all these multicolored cans everywhere. There was a car inside, and they have everything from really crazy expensive gold tin sardines all the way up to just regular sardines, all these different flavors and varieties. Never in my wildest dream was I going to be like, oh, yay, sardines. But I tried them, and in the right sauces, they're actually very good. I bought one, brought it back with me, and it's still sitting there. I'm kind of afraid to eat it, not because it's been a couple of years, because those things will last. It's just I know I'm just gonna eat it, try it, and be like, oh, that's not good, not what I remembered. But I'm sure it's delicious. I'm just waiting on it. So yeah, that was another big surprise in Portugal was the sardines. Anyway, yeah, so that was Lisbon. Next up is Madrid, Spain. Madrid was the second stop on my second tour of Europe. Um, I absolutely loved Madrid. So much so, I would love to go back and visit Madrid again and go to more to Spain, Barcelona, and maybe take a train around. I absolutely loved it. It was not just the food that was great, the culture, the stores, the restaurants, the museums. It was a very emotional time seeing the museums and all the paintings, which I'll go into in another video. So we're here to talk about food. One of the first things I did in the area I stayed in, which was called Puerta del Sol, that area is a rather touristy area. I walked around and checked the area out. There was a lot of stores, grocery stores, and stuff like that, and they all sell bread and other meats and stuff like that. However, quality wise, I can't imagine it was very high quality. So I kind of stayed away from that. Although they literally in some of these places will bake fresh bread there, it just looked like it wasn't the best. Um, in the Puerto del Sol area, you'll see a lot of restaurants have courtyard areas out front in the big plaza where they set up restaurant seating, and you can get all kinds of different foods there. I spent quite a long time going to almost every one of them, and that sounds strange, trying to find paella served for just one person. I couldn't get it, couldn't find it. And I even remember in one place, it might have been a translation error, but one place where I was like, I'd like to buy the paella, they wouldn't give it to me because I was just one person. Eventually, in that area, I did stumble upon a restaurant that was willing to serve paella for one person. However, I don't know why, but I just wasn't enamored with it. It was fine, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but I'm like, I'm in Spain, I got to get paella. It just wasn't all that. I did pair it with a wine, and again, as I mentioned, I'm not a wine drinker, but one in Rome. So that was my first kind of experience there, and then I wandered around a little bit more, and I realized that Spain is just as serious as Rome and also Lisbon with their sliced meats. So you go into these places and you're going to see, very similar to the other locations, the legs of pork and all their meats in the cases and stuff like that. All very fresh and awesome meats. The prices are tend to be a little expensive, but like meats and cheeses like that are everywhere. One of the more fun places that I stopped in was a place called the Museo de Jamon. It's the Ham Museum, and you walk in, and there's this just giant bar area, and in the there's obviously the legs of ham everywhere. The legs of they call ham is kind of a generic term, um, but anyway, they have the pork everywhere, and then in the back is another counter with even more pork up top, legs of pork, and then there's a display case with like desserts and stuff like that. So the Museo de Hamon was where I first had the experience of tapa. Now, as my tour guide later on would explain to me, tapa is not really what we kind of know it as here in America, what we call tapas. They call tapa there. And it's not like, while I'm sure these places exist, the locals don't necessarily do this. Where we would go to a restaurant and spend a ton of money on these small dish plates and have like little bit, little bit, little bit. It's not really what they do there. The locals tend to have a different situation. So when I went to the Ham Museum, I noticed that when you go up to the bar area, you can order obviously the meats and cheeses. They have all these platters you can purchase. Rather expensive. This is not a cheap. Madrid's not cheap by any means. It's on par with any other place around Europe like that. So I went right ahead and ordered off the menu, and then I ordered a Coke because I wasn't really feeling beer. But I noticed a lot of people were drinking these really tiny sized beers, and they were given these plates. So the plates were of like ham pieces and pieces of meat that didn't quite make the cut for sliced meats and stuff like that. All the leftover stuff that was still edible, they chopped up into chunks and they were serving it to the customers. That's tapa. Cheeses that are chopped up that was left over or whatever they would serve. That's tapa. Really good potato chips that they had there that they served up. That's tapa, and it was all free. When you buy a beer in these locations, this one specifically, they gave you free snacky stuff for your beer, and that is tapa. So that was my first experience with it. I unfortunately found it a little too late after I ordered this rather expensive meat platter. When you look at the picture, you'd be like, that can't be that expensive. It actually was. But that's what I found out. Of course, I asked for some anyway because, again, when in Rome. Um, what I other thing I found out while we're on that subject is the beer there at these local places anyway. It's not like you have a choice. They whatever the local beer is that they get in is what they have on tap. You can't be like, I'll have a Bud Light or I'll have a Guinness, whatever. Like you ask for a beer and they give you this small glass of beer. It's very common at these places just to stand there, drink a beer, eat some tapa, pay your bill and go, or have a couple beers and go. It's a very relaxed atmosphere, and that's what I encountered there. As a matter of fact, there weren't a lot. The picture I'm going to show will show people sitting, a couple people sitting and stuff. But by the time I got there and ate, I was one of the few people sitting because there's not a lot of seats. But the bar was packed with people standing, drinking their beer, and going. Um, I had kind of a fun experience after that when I went into a store and I was trying to find a place that baked bread because I couldn't find it on my phone or I couldn't remember the word for like bakery. So I was asking for the translation of bread store, and they just looked at me like I had fucking two heads. They were like, I don't any idea what you're talking about. Eventually, I did find a bread bakery and another around the corner and was a bunch of different meat places, cheese places, and bread places. So that before I went on my food tour, I kind of did some exploring, and that's the kind of stuff I found. There's actually a few different locations for the Museo de Jamon, and I will tell you right now, unfortunately, I do not have any video, and I also have very few pictures of the foods in Madrid. I really regret it. I don't know what happened. I'm usually good about that stuff, and I just don't have it. So the pictures you're going to see are very sparse for Madrid. My food tour was really good, and obviously, again, like I mentioned with food tours, I went with a local who talked about the locals' food and gave me more experience with tapa. Nightlife there is a lot obviously different, and the foods and stuff like that you get when you're walking around. There's pretty much everything, all different kinds of restaurants. It is very eclectic. It's not just Spanish food. Um, it just depends on the area you're in. I did stumble on a nightlifey area in my travels, and there was all kinds of stuff there. I remember during my walk to go meet up with my food tour, there was a place that actually sold Dick waffles, which I definitely have a photo of that. They have a super good sense of humor about stuff like that there. Um, I saw a lot of murals and stuff like that that were rowdy, raunchy. Um, and they have stuff like Dunkin' Donuts and things like that. While I did not partake of the donuts there, and I will go on about this quite a bit, so you might have heard this already. The donuts at Dunkin' Donuts in other countries are like a different animal compared to the crap we get here in America. The quality's better, the choices, they have so many more choices, and they're just so much better. I don't know why that is, but I do know why that is. It's just America. We mass produce and fast pace everything. There, they actually put some care and quality into it, so even that type of stuff is better. Um, so yeah, it's a very eclectic area for food as well. And Yeah, I apologize. I don't have a lot of photos. Obviously, this is another location that has gelato. I definitely ate my share of gelato when I was there, and it's very good. But gelato is gelato is gelato. As For the most part, it tastes very similar no matter where you go. And then they're very big on octopus. Like it's everywhere, and fried octopus, like rinds. It was a thing that I was surprised to see. It was just it was a thing everywhere, sandwiches and everything. Um, so yeah, that's my memory of Madrid. Again, I cannot recommend Madrid enough as a place to visit. It was so much fun, so much amazing things. The museums there, the artwork, the food, the culture, the people. It is definitely not a cheap place to visit, but it is really well worth it. So now we're on to Florence. Oh no, I hear you say. Florence was his last stop in Europe. Does that mean this is the end of his talking about food? Fear not. We have other videos which will include Morocco and Southeast Asia. So if you enjoyed these talks, me discussing the foods I ate with the photos, fear not, again, you will have more to watch coming up. Florence was quite an experience. People go there for the food, the culture, um, the amazing architecture. I stayed in a 500-year-old apartment that I found in Airbnb. There is a separate video on that. I highly suggest you check it out. It was amazing. It was way too much for me. I didn't need it. I just kind of felt like, oh, why not? It's a 500-year-old uh, place in Florence. Just do it up. It was more than I needed, but I figured, what the hell. Um, anyway, I stayed near the Duomo area, and it was a very busy area, and there was a lot going on. The first thing I did for food was I checked out the pizza, as I am wont to do. Pizza in Florence is not good. As a matter of fact, when I talked to one of the locals about it, the joke was, where do you get good pizza? You get on the train and you go to Sicily. It's just not good. The quality wasn't the same as Rome. Um, every location has its different pizza, and Florence just isn't very good. Because it's very touristy, there's a lot of very expensive shops, restaurants, and stores. One thing in particular strikes my memory. is these chocolate shops. I went into one in particular. It was just so expensive. I ended up bringing some home for some friends, but it was just really, really expensive. There was also a ice cream shop attached to it, and just everything there was expensive. Um, Obviously, they have gelato there. Um, I I tried two or three gelatos every place I stopped at, and I remember Florence was the place where they got me. I asked for a gelato, and I guess I didn't specify the size, so they gave me this gigantic one, um, and it was like $12. It's a very expensive place, so be prepared if you're going to go. I did the food tour in Florence, and it was another one of those times where, fortunately for my stomach, I was the only one on it. And again, like I mentioned, it's expensive, and the food there is so good. So I had so much food. Started off with it was like another walking tour where you learn about the culture. It started off with bruschetta and wine, which was really good. Um, and from there, we went on and we got some pasta, again with wine. And we ended up going to a sandwich shop and we had this specialty sandwich, which I'm kicking myself for not remembering what it was called. So we got to try a lot of different foods.